we are getting reports of the candidates that Saints are requesting to interview. You certainly heard Ben Johnson up at Detroit. You've heard Mike Vrabel, who has been released from his contract with the Browns, where he was a consultant. You have heard that Darren Rizzi will get an interview as well. There are Aaron Glenn, as we mentioned, from Detroit. Like, there have been a lot of names talked about, and I think a lot of those make sense. And none of the names outside of Rizzi, I'll be honest, like, I don't think hiring Darren Rizzi is the answer for the Saints. Like, that would be one of the few hires that I would grab the mic and go, they just don't get it. Because it's not really anything against Darren Rizzi. It's more so that would be against the organization even attempting at turning over a new leaf. Like, you have got to try to turn over a new leaf here if you're the New Orleans Saints. And if you hire the same coach that's been here and he keeps the same offensive coordinator, and it's like, it just doesn't, that's not what needs to happen in New Orleans. So I've surveyed some of the candidates, and I'm confident that I don't know every candidate the Saints are approaching. Certainly not. I mean, I wouldn't have imagined Rex Ryan was a candidate for any job as of 3 weeks ago, and all of a sudden he's all over ESPN and all over Twitter and getting a shot potentially with the Jets, which, by the way, Darren Rizzi reportedly interviewing with the Jets, but that's not of our concern at this point with New Orleans. I've got a name that I've settled on that I think makes the most sense in a number of ways, and it's who I think the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints should be. He's 58 years old. He's got head coaching experience, comes on the offensive side of the ball, and I think would represent a new start for New Orleans. That head coach would be the current offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, Todd Monken. Todd Monken, as I mentioned, is 58 years old. And as I mentioned, he's got head coaching experience. It's not at the NFL level, but he does have head coaching experience at Southern Miss. That is not necessarily applicable to what you would be doing in New Orleans. Yes, it's on the Gulf Coast. Yes, there's black and gold involved. That's about all the similarity. But he inherited, Todd Monken did, a mess at Southern Miss. In his first year, they went 1-11, 1-7 in league play. In his second year, they went 3-9 and 1-7 in league play. And in his third year, they went 9-5, 7-1 in league play. So he took this team from 1-7 to 7-1 in 2 years at Southern Miss. Again, I am not trying to sell you a bill of goods on how well he can compete in the NFC South because he won at Southern Miss in CUSA. But that is his opportunity to run an organization, to hire a staff, to run his offense, and the results were very, very good. Here's what I think, to me, means a little bit more. He eventually became the offensive coordinator at Georgia. And we know that they had struggled to kind of open things up in the Kirby Smart era. You had Jake Fromm, and they were kind of running the ball, and they weren't necessarily a dynamic offense that was designed to keep up with Joe Burrow and Tua and Trevor Lawrence and all those quarterbacks that were running through Ohio State. They weren't good enough. Well, he came in, and in that first year, the COVID year 2020, he had JT Daniel and Stetson Bennett, and they were a decent football team, whatever. But the second year that he was the offensive coordinator at Georgia was 2021. They were number 9 in the nation in scoring offense with Stetson Bennett. They won the national championship. And then the next year, they were 4th in the nation in scoring offense and won the national championship with Stetson Bennett. Now, Georgia at that point has a better team than everyone else in the country. They've got more high-level recruits. They put more guys in the NFL. Their defenses were hellacious. But with the help of Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers and some of those, solid players early, you had a really good offense that was in the top 10 in the country with Georgia. And then he moves on to Baltimore. And at Baltimore, you take a team that, yes, has a lot of talent, but you went from top 10 in the country in offense with Stetson Bennett to calling plays for Lamar Jackson. I can't think of two guys with less similar skill sets. One is a freak of nature who won the Heisman Trophy, who can run like a deer and is an elite passer and is just an incredible athlete. The other is a walk-on that I wouldn't notice if he was standing next to me at McDonald's. And he produced with both of them. You look at 2023 with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, 6th in the NFL in yards per game, 1st in the NFL in rushing, 4th in the NFL in scoring offense. And then this past year, well, not this past year, this year that just ended 2 days ago, first in the NFL in yards per game, first in the NFL in rushing, and third in the NFL in points per game. Added Derrick Henry to the mix. It got even better, and everything went swimmingly. But on his resume, I've got play calling that transformed a college football program offensively and took them into the next era with a limited quarterback. Then a move up to the NFL with a transcendent quarterback, an MVP quarterback, and excellent production there as well. And then you go back and realize that he has run the show. Recruiting and hiring coaches at Southern Miss and playing games against Marshall and Louisiana Tech and Rice and whoever they were playing. Yeah, that's different. I got it, and I'm not trying to immediately point to his 7-1 CUSA record and go, see, he can win the South. But I look at Todd Monken, and I like the resume. And what have most people said about this Saints head coaching search? Well, they're not going to be able to get Mike Vrabel. He's going to New England. They're not going to be able to get Ben Johnson. He's going to go to the Bears. They're not going to be able to pick their guy. Well, okay, but what if Todd Monken's like 4th or 5th on everybody's list? I think this makes a lot of sense. I don't think that Todd Monken is going to be among the top of the list for Jacksonville, for the Jets. Maybe I'm wrong. I certainly could be wrong. But this guy's resume is really, really good. The question is, does he want to take this job? There's an interesting piece to this whole thing that I can't necessarily paint the right picture of because I don't know what these meetings between the Saints executives and these prospective head coaches are going to be like. How much of it is recruiting that coach? How much of it is that coach selling himself to the Saints? We've kind of painted it as the Saints are going to have to do some real recruiting, make some promises, because they're not real desirable. It feels like if you're the Bears and you've got Caleb Williams, potentially some people would just throw themselves at that. Now, I painted the picture back 2 weeks ago saying, hey, all these jobs have their issues. Woody Johnson, not done a great job as the Jets owner. That whole situation and culture there, not great. The Bears have been an absolute mess for decades. Every once in a while, they pop one good team. They got to the Super Bowl with Grossman. They had a couple good years with Cutler. The double doink team was decent. But it's been a mess because the McCaskey family and then what comes under them, which is right now Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, who kind of share important duties and nobody really knows who's calling the shots. That's a mess too. Jacksonville, mess. Got to spend 2 weeks in London. Owner is all over the place. Trevor Lawrence, there are issues everywhere, okay? So I don't know how much has to be a sales pitch from the Saints, how much has to be the coaches that come in selling themselves to the Saints. But to me, I look at this resume from Todd Monken and I go, this could be something that's really good. I agree that I like the idea of going with an offensive coach. I think if you were to hire Ben Johnson, that would be fantastic. I'm also of the school of thought that I think Mike Vrabel would be a great addition if he's not in New England. And Aaron Glenn, I'm not going to go kicking and screaming on. Rizzi's probably the only one that I think that's just ridiculous. But there's not a lot bad on Todd Monken's resume. It started at the college level. He wound his way around at LSU in the early 2000s. But for the last, more than a decade, he's been either in control of the entire organization or calling plays and scoring a lot of points. And to me, that sounds like a guy that makes a lot of sense as an ex-head coach. So I'm officially planting my flag. I got Todd Monken as the next head coach of the Saints. That's the guy I think would make a ton of sense. We'll see how this thing shakes out over the next few weeks, but that's where my head is right at this moment. Jacob Beck, you have heard my sales pitch. You've heard me talk about Todd Monken and his credentials. You've kind of heard me compare the Saints to the rest of the league. They're hiring coaches. Your thoughts?
I would definitely I would definitely be pretty happy with Todd Monken. But I think that the Saints are just going to, as Sharif said earlier, like they continually have showed us, and until proven otherwise, that they just like to make moves that they're comfortable with. And so I fully expect Aaron Glenn to be the next head coach of the Saints. I think a lot of people are going to say that, and it just makes a lot of sense. But I hope that they go out and get somebody like Todd Monken, or I don't know about somebody like Joe Brady, who hasn't really been in the league very long and has proven to be obviously, pretty good calling plays for the Bills with Josh Allen. But is he going to be good calling plays for either Derek Carr or, rookie quarterback number 2? So that I'm not sure about. But I think a guy that's proven himself like Monken would be good. But yeah, I don't expect them to go too far out of the box. But maybe they'll prove me wrong. Hopefully they do.
We'll see. I think this is going to go on 3 weeks
at least.
My guess. Kind of depends on what
happens to the
what
Lions.
happens in the playoffs with the teams. I mean, look, Monken's calling plays,
Yeah,
Brady's calling plays, Glenn's calling plays, Johnson's calling plays. They're all calling plays. Vrabel's the only guy who's just hanging out. So you can grab him whenever it is that you'd like. And Rex Ryan, pretty much hanging out. You can grab him whenever you want to. But everybody else is kind of tied up at the moment. So we'll see how that shakes out over the next 3 weeks or so. Hey, it's Hunt. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button. Leave your comments in the section below. And hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.